Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we slice through dense legislation to get you the critical knowledge you need.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're doing a deep dive into India's Home Rent Rules 2025. These are fundamentally reshaping urban life, and they're all driven by the Model Tenancy Act.
A huge topic and one that affects millions.
It really does. If you're navigating the rental market, maybe you're a landlord, a young professional looking for an apartment, or just curious about these big policy changes, you've probably felt this shift. Our listeners tasked us with understanding the core mission here, and it seems to be about standardization, transparency, and just bringing some predictability to contracts.
Right. Contracts that have, for way too long, relied on shaky handshakes.
And that mission feels long overdue. I mean, the context here is everything, right? Why were these rules so necessary?
Well, you've seen this explosive, rapid organization, especially in metro hubs and even Tier 2 cities.
Yeah.
And the rental market just couldn't keep up with fair practices. The old system was, a bit like the Wild West. It thrived on these informal verbal agreements.
Which led to huge power imbalances.
Exactly. And that created these major pervasive pain points. We're talking security deposits that felt arbitrarily high, landlords raising the rent overnight.
And tenants facing eviction with no clear legal standing.
Precisely. So the 2025 rules, they're not just an update. They're a direct attempt to provide legal safeguards for tenants while also strengthening things for landlords through these predictable contracts.
I think the government has decided the casual era is officially over. Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the biggest foundational change.
Let's do it.
Under these new 2025 rules, that verbal agreement you made over coffee or WhatsApp chat, it's, for all intents and purposes, dead.
That's the absolute core mandate. Every single tenancy agreement must now be in writing.
And not just in writing, right?
No, not just in writing. It has to be registered with the proper local authority. And crucially, the law gives you a really tight window for this. Registration has to happen within 2 months of signing.
2 months. That sounds aggressive, especially for a country with the sheer volume of tenancy turnover India sees. So what's the implication if you just skip the registration?
Well, the consequences are severe. Unregistered agreements lose their protective power.
Meaning?
You could face financial penalties, and critically, if you end up in a dispute, that unregistered document may not hold any legal value in court. So you might have a piece of paper, but it offers minimal protection.
I see.
What's really fascinating here, though, is the modernization aspect. States are pushing heavily for digital online registration.
And using digital stamp papers.
Exactly. And this isn't just more bureaucracy. It's about data integrity. It gives landlords transparent, tamper-proof documents.
And for tenants, it's easier evidence, a clear digital record you can't lose.
Right. It can't be misplaced or easily disputed.
And we'll circle back to what that massive data set could mean later. But if mandatory documentation is the foundation, the next rules address what was, arguably the #1 friction point, the cost.
Yeah, front costs, yeah.
This is genuinely the biggest financial relief for tenants nationwide. The standardization and, more importantly, the capping of security deposits.
It dramatically lowers that financial barrier to entry, especially in the big cities.
So what are the new limits?
We finally have clear caps. For residential properties, the security deposit is now capped at a maximum of 2 months' rent.
Just 2 months. Okay, and for commercial?
For any commercial or non-residential properties, that cap is set higher, at a maximum of 6 months' rent.
Let's put that 2-month cap into perspective. Previously, in places like Bengaluru or Mumbai, it wasn't weird for a landlord to demand 6, 8, sometimes even 12 months of rent up front.
A staggering amount. It's a huge financial barrier.
It is.
It's monumental. I mean, think about a young family or a recent grad moving to a metro area. The difference between paying, say, $20,000 for a deposit versus $120,000.
That can dictate whether they can even afford to move at all.
It injects liquidity right back into the tenant's pocket. It encourages movement.
Let me ask the challenging question, though, from the landlord side. Many of them rely on those big deposits as working capital or a cushion for major damage. Doesn't capping it create a potential cash crunch?
That's the tension point, absolutely. The Act is trying to standardize risk, not eliminate it. Landlords have to shift their reliance from deposits to the enforcement mechanism.
So the legal process.
Right. The rules say the deposit has to be refunded promptly when the tenant vacates, after deducting any liability for damage or bills. The recourse is now standardized legal action, not a huge upfront payment.
And demanding more is now illegal.
Explicitly illegal. It gives tenants a clear legal tool to refuse or file a complaint without fearing they'll lose the house.
Okay, that settles the money side. Here's where it gets really interesting, moving beyond cash and into personal space.
Privacy, yeah.
You've given the tenant their wallet back, but now you're also giving them back their privacy. The new rules grant clear rights over the rented space. So the era of surprise inspections is over.
It's a huge shift in that dynamic.
Yeah.
Landlords or property managers now have to provide a minimum 24-hour written or electronic notice before they can enter.
And that's for any reason. Repairs, inspections.
Any reasonable cause that's specified in the agreement?
Yes.
Yes, it's mandatory.
I remember stories of landlords just showing up on a Sunday afternoon to check on things. It always felt so intrusive.
That's over. And the rules go even further, drawing a very clear boundary on timing.
How so?
To protect the tenant's time and safety, no one, not even the landlord, is allowed to enter the premises before sunrise and after sunset.
Wow. So it clearly defines reasonable working hours for this stuff.
It does. It moves us from vague expectations to black and white rules.
Is that 24-hour notice absolute, or are there exceptions?
There is one necessary exception: true emergencies. A landlord can enter without notice in cases of force majeure or natural calamity.
Like a fire or a flare.
Exactly. The Act lists things like war, flood, fire, cyclone, earthquake, any scenario that requires urgent access. But outside of that extreme list, notice is non-negotiable.
Fantastic. Now let's tackle the second biggest financial stress point: sudden rent increases.
The other big one. The new rules offer much-needed predictability here. Landlords can't just decide halfway through a term that the market has shifted and impose a drastic hike.
So it's all pre-agreed now.
The framework mandates a structured, pre-agreed increase pattern. If a landlord wants to revise the rent, they have to issue a written notice, usually between 30 and 90 days ahead.
And does the law cap the actual hike percentage itself?
The law mandates that hikes must strictly follow the terms already laid out in the registered agreement.
I see. So it's negotiated up front.
Yes. And while the percentage is negotiated, the source material notes that typically, agreements structure these annual revisions in a sensible 5 to 10% range.
So the protection is about preventing those arbitrary midterm price shocks.
Exactly. And just as tenants get that protection, they also get strong protection against, arbitrary eviction.
You can't just be asked to leave on a whim.
Not anymore. Eviction is now entirely formalized. It's only allowed when specific valid criteria are met and proper legal procedure is followed.
And what are those criteria?
Things like the tenant violates the agreement, rent is unpaid for a set period, like 2 consecutive months.
Or the landlord genuinely needs the property for personal use.
Correct. Or if the tenant made structural changes without written consent. If none of those are met, the tenant cannot be legally removed.
I appreciate the balance here. So what happens if the tenant is the one violating the agreement by, say, refusing to leave after the lease is over?
That's where the countermeasure comes in. To protect the landlord, if a fixed-term tenancy ends and isn't renewed, and the tenant fails to leave, they become liable to pay an enhanced rent.
And enhanced usually means significantly higher.
Oh, yeah. It's a strong incentive to leave on time.
That makes sense.
And another thing, the rules reinforce the contract on usage. Subletting is strictly prohibited unless the landlord has given express written consent.
Right, to prevent tenants from turning it into an unauthorized business.
Exactly. And to make sure all this clarity is baked in from day one, the rules mandate certain essential clauses must be in the agreement.
So no more ambiguity hidden in the fine print.
The idea is for the agreement to be a transparent playbook. It has to cover everything.
Yeah.
Monthly rent, deposit, duration, rent revision rules, repair responsibilities, the refund process.
Everything is spelled out.
To eliminate the gray areas that fueled 90% of all disputes.
Okay, let's dive into maintenance because that's often the biggest headache. How should we think about who pays for what?
The easiest way is to think of it like this. The landlord is responsible for the bones of the house and the infrastructure.
And the tenant.
The tenant handles consumables and daily fixes.
Okay, give us the concrete examples for the landlord's part. The big stuff.
Sure. The landlord covers structural repairs, necessary whitewashing and painting, major plumbing pipes, and all the internal and external electrical wiring, the core systems.
Got it. And for the tenant, the daily fixes.
That's the periodic minor stuff that wears out. changing tap washers, drain cleaning, repairs to a geyser or water closet, fixing a circuit breaker, replacing knobs or locks, and maintaining any gardens or open spaces.
All the stuff that costs less and needs to be handled immediately.
Precisely.
Now, what happens when things go seriously wrong with repairs?
The rules address that. If the place becomes genuinely uninhabitable and the landlord refuses to act after getting a written notice,
The tenant has an out.
yes, the tenant can legally abandon the premises after giving the landlord 15 days written notice. It stops the bleeding for the tenant.
And what if the property is compromised by something external, like a force of nature?
That's covered by a specific force majeure clause. If the place becomes uninhabitable due to a flood or fire, the landlord can't charge rent until it's fully restored.
A crucial protection against paying rent for a ruin.
Absolutely.
The ultimate goal here, with all these standardized agreements and clear definitions, must be faster dispute resolution.
Without a doubt. The Act is designed to streamline the legal process. The target timeline for resolving disputes is ambitiously rapid. 60 days.
60 days.
Yes, by setting up dedicated rent authorities and courts to handle these cases, it just removes the ambiguity.
So what does this all mean in practice right now? I know it's a national reform, but implementation varies by state. Where are we seeing the impact?
It's proceeding quickly in large states. Major states like Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, Karnataka, they've all revised their laws along these lines.
And we're already seeing results.
We are. We're seeing concrete evidence the market is formalizing. Data from places like the Inspector General of Registration in Mumbai shows a documented surge in formal, registered rental agreements.
So this isn't just theory. The laws are actually shifting the market away from informality.
And that compliance, that digital registration, is where the future of this data lies.
Right.
Every one of those agreements is a structured data point. It's a reliable record of rent payments, deposits, duration. It's high-quality financial data that just never existed at this scale before.
That's a comprehensive look. So the 2025 reforms are really about clarity, fairness, and legal balance for both sides.
Exactly. Moving the market from handshake deals to secure, predictable contracts.
So the main takeaway for you, our listener, is what?
It's this. If you're currently in an old, informal, or unregistered agreement, the recommendation is clear. You should move quickly to create a new, fully compliant, digitally stamped, and registered agreement now.
Don't rely on the old ways if you want full legal protection.
Not under this new regime.
And here's a final thought for you to mull on as you absorb all this. Given this mandatory push for digital registration and the aggregation of millions of these contracts, what impact will this massive new data set have on future financial services? Industry experts are already exploring how this reliable rental data could lead to the creation of a standardized rent credit score, maybe an R score. This could offer access to loans or financial products to people with a spotless rental history, completely bypassing traditional credit methods. The standardization of rent could fundamentally rewire personal finance.
A fascinating possibility.
And that's a deep dive for another day.